Gibb was never supposed to be the headline. He was never the brother with the falsetto that soared over disco dance floors, or the trembling vibrato that made ballads ache. He was the quiet one, the steady hand, the man who kept the music glued together. And yet, on a cold January night in 2003, Maurice's name lit up headlines around the world. Not because of a new song, not because of a reunion tour, but because he was gone. Gone in 3 days. 3 days after walking into Mount Sinai Medical Center in Miami alive, talking hopeful. 3 days after cracking nervous jokes to his wife Yvonne, promising he'd be fine. 3 days after being told it was nothing more than a routine case of appendicitis, and then, nothing. The official story was neat, clinical, complications from a twisted intestine, but Barry Gibb called it unacceptable. Robin called it deadly carelessness. And millions of fans around the world called it something else, a tragedy that never made sense. Because the truth is, Maurice Gibb didn't simply collapse and fade away. He was failed by time, failed by mistakes, failed by silence. And the question that has haunted fans ever since, was his death truly a cruel twist of fate? Or was it the result of errors no one dared admit? You're watching RetroWaves, where the hidden truths of music's legends are finally told. Subscribe, like and share, because here, the voices you thought you knew will never sound the same again. To understand the tragedy of Maurice's death, you have to step into his world in 2003. He was 53 years old, at once a survivor and a man reborn. The Bee Gees were no longer topping charts every month, but they were legends, knighted by the Queen, inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, their music eternalized on dance floors and film soundtracks across the globe. Maurice himself had been through storms most fans never saw. He had battled alcohol for decades, lost his youngest brother Andy in 1988, nearly destroyed his marriage, and carried guilt and depression heavier than any award he ever received. But by the turn of the new century, things looked different. He had found stability in his family, his wife Yvonne, his children, Adam and Samantha. He had found joy again in recording, experimenting, even sketching ideas for new music with Barry and Robin. Barry would later say that Maurice seemed to finally be in a good place. Then came the night of January 9th. Maurice doubled over in pain, severe, stabbing, unrelenting. Yvonne watched the color drain from his face. He collapsed, clutching his stomach, unable to stand. An ambulance rushed him to Mount Sinai Medical Center in Miami. Doctors suspected appendicitis, routine, they said. Easy to treat. Surgery would fix it. But what Maurice really had was a twisted intestine. A dangerous condition that needed immediate decisive action. A condition where hours, even minutes, could mean the difference between life and death. And in those first, critical hours, everything went wrong. When Maurice arrived at the hospital that night, the clock was already ticking. Doctors assessed him quickly, severe abdominal pain, possible appendicitis. A routine case, but instead of rushing him to surgery, they hesitated, they debated, they ordered more tests. 2 hours passed. Maurice lay in the ER hallway, pale and sweating, his body screaming for intervention while paperwork and discussion slowed the process. By midnight, he was still waiting. Finally, the decision was made to operate, but the hospital's VIP protocol, the very system designed to protect celebrity patients, failed him. Critical equipment for resuscitation wasn't in the operating room. It wasn't even on the same floor. It was kept on the 8th floor, in a special wing for VIP. When Maurice's heart stopped during the operation, doctors scrambled, nurses ran upstairs. 10 minutes ticked by before the equipment arrived. 10 minutes without oxygen, 10 minutes in which his brain starved, his organs faltered, his fate was sealed. When they revived him, it was already too late. Maurice's body lived, but his mind was gone. When Barry and Robin arrived, they saw their brother unconscious, machines keeping him alive. The man they had grown up with, sung beside, fought with, and depended on, was slipping away. Barry, normally the careful, protective one, couldn't contain himself. Through tears, he told reporters. He walked into that hospital talking. 3 days later, we lost him. That's unacceptable. Robin was even sharp. In an interview with the BBC, his words cut through the silence. They could have saved him. This wasn't a medical error. This was deadly carelessness. The Gibb brothers weren't men who cried wolf. They weren't exaggerators. If anything, Maurice had always been the one to smooth things over. So, when Barry and Robin spoke with such raw anger, the world listened. Fans were furious. How could a twisted bowel, a condition that is treatable when acted on quickly, take Maurice Gibb? How could a hospital let him wait for hours? Let critical equipment sit on the wrong floor? Let him fade in plain sight? For the public, the tragedy wasn't just heartbreaking, it was suspicious. But as anger rose, a new twist emerged. Maurice's widow, Yvonne, was left with an impossible choice. She could take Mount Sinai to court, drag the hospital into a public trial, force doctors to answer under oath, expose every mistake, every delay, every failure. Or she could protect her children from years of painful headlines, protect the family's reputation, and accept a private settlement. She chose silence. Mount Sinai agreed to pay an undisclosed sum. In return, the family dropped legal action. There would be no trial, no testimony, no full account of what happened in those 3 days. For fans, the decision was devastating. They wanted justice. They wanted the truth. Instead, they got silence. And Barry's later confession only deepened the suspicion. There are things about Maurice's death that I think the world needs to know. But I'm bound by legal agreements. Bound, gagged, silenced. Maurice's death, once a public tragedy, became a private secret. And in that silence, the questions only grew louder. For years, the silence around Maurice's death was suffocating. The official report was a single sentence: complications from a twisted intestine. The family gave few interviews. Mount Sinai said nothing, and fans, despite their grief, were forced to move on with questions unanswered. But silence can't last forever. In 2024, a single headline reignited the fire. Leaked Mount Sinai records raise questions about Maurice Gibb's death. It wasn't from a tabloid. It wasn't speculation. It came from Variety and The Guardian, outlets with credibility, backed by documents no one could ignore. The leaks came from inside. Internal memos, ER reports, emails between doctors, and they painted a picture no fan wanted to believe. 2 different staff members had flagged Maurice's condition as highly consistent with intestinal strangulation. That meant twisted bowel. That meant urgent surgery. That meant, in plain words, this could kill him, if not treated immediately. And yet, the warnings were dismissed. Doctors debated. Administrators hesitated. The nurse, who wrote those warnings, she resigned weeks after Maurice's death. In her resignation letter, later quoted by journalists, she described systematic negligence and a culture that placed VIP appearances above urgent care. It was a devastating revelation, because if true, Maurice's death wasn't just bad luck. It was a failure written into the system itself. Fans reacted with fury. Social media erupted. Justice for Maurice trended worldwide. Old fan clubs, some dormant since the Bee Gees' disco era, came alive again. Letters poured into newspapers. In London, vigils were held outside music halls where the Bee Gees had once performed. In Miami, fans gathered outside Mount Sinai with candles demanding answers. The family, still bound by legal silence, said nothing. But Barry's earlier words now rang louder than ever. There are things about Maurice's death that I think the world needs to know, but I'm bound by legal agreements. The leaks gave weight to those words. They proved what fans had feared for 20 years. Maurice didn't just die, he was failed. But as the outrage grew, another narrative bubbled up. Stranger, darker, and less verifiable. The idea of a Gibb family curse. Fans pieced it together like a puzzle of pain. First, Andy, the youngest Gibb brother. Charming, beautiful, adored. His solo career burned bright in the late 1970s, but by the age of 30, he was gone. His heart, weakened by years of cocaine and alcohol abuse, gave out in Then Maurice in 2003. A twisted intestine, untreated in time. Then Robin in 2012. His twin, his mirror image, taken by colorectal cancer. 3 brothers, 3 untimely deaths. Fans saw a pattern, a haunting symmetry. On online forums, Bee Gees devotees shared theories late into the night. Some said the family line carried a genetic predisposition to intestinal disease. Others pointed to the eerie fact that Maurice and Robin, twins, died of conditions in the same part of the body. Tabloids fanned the flames, branding it the Bee Gees curse. But here's what's verified. No official genetic tests were ever released. No doctor has ever confirmed such a predisposition in public. The curse remains speculation, a rumor not fact. And yet, it persists, because the story of the Bee Gees has always felt larger than life. Their rise was meteoric. Their fame, overwhelming. Their music, eternal. And their personal lives, riddled with heartbreak. A family who gave joy to millions, seemed destined to carry tragedy of their own. But Maurice's story was never just about tragedy. It was about genius hidden in plain sight. Maurice Gibb wasn't just a member of the Bee Gees. He was their foundation, their architect. Unlike Barry, who was the leader, unlike Robin, who was the soul, Maurice was the glue. He played guitar, bass, keyboard, organ, drums. At times he played all of them in the same recording session. Producers said he had a gift no one else had. He could pick up an instrument he'd never touched before, and within minutes, make it sound like he'd been playing it all his life. It was Maurice who arranged the harmonies that made Stayin' Alive immortal. Maurice, who built the bass line of Night Fever, the groove that defined disco. Maurice, who quietly fixed songs in the studio when others were too tired or distracted. And yet when the cameras rolled, he was barely noticed. In interviews, Barry and Robin spoke. Maurice often just nodded, smiled, or deflected. It left scars. By the late 1970s, at the height of Bee Gees mania, Maurice turned to alcohol. Friends said he drank because he felt invisible. The more ignored he felt, the more he drank. But when he was sober, he was the heartbeat, the peacemaker when Barry and Robin clashed. The quiet strength that held the family together. Barry would later admit, Maurice didn't just keep the beat in the music, he kept the beat for our family. When he died, the Bee Gees fell apart too. Even in death, his influence lived on. In 2025, his son Adam released Father's Eyes, a tribute album. Lyrics spoke of shadows and light, echoes and silence. Fans interpreted it as a message to the world, to see Maurice as he really was, not as the forgotten brother, but as the heart. And soon, the world may see his story on screen. Steven Spielberg's upcoming Bee Gees biopic is rumored to include a haunting scene. Maurice waiting in a hospital hallway, hour after hour. A moment fans say the world must never forget. Now picture it, slowly, the hospital hallway. White walls, cold lights, the smell of disinfectant thick in the air. Maurice lies on a gurney, clutching his stomach, sweat beads on his forehead. His breathing shallow, his body trembling. Doctors walk past, clipboards in hand. Nurses whisper, waiting for orders. Administrators debate, appendicitis, blockage, twisted bowel. Every minute is precious, every second a countdown. And yet, nothing happens. 2 hours pass. Maurice's pain grows unbearable. He looks to Yvonne, his wife, his anchor, his hope. She squeezes his hand. She tries to believe the doctors know best. Finally, they wheel him into surgery. Relief flickers. But as the bright lights flood above, his body gives out. His heart stops. Panic. Shouts. The room fills with urgency. Doctors call for the crash cart. Nurses run. But then silence. The machine isn't there. It's on the 8th floor, locked away in the VIP wing. 10 minutes pass. 10 minutes in which his brain is starved of oxygen. 10 minutes that erase decades of genius, of laughter, of family, of music. When the machine finally arrives, it's too late. They bring his body back, but the man they knew is gone. 3 days later, his heart gives out again, and this time it does not return. Barry's grief breaks the world's heart. He walked into that hospital talking. 3 days later, we lost him. Robin's fury burns even deeper. This wasn't a mistake. This was deadly carelessness. The silence of Mount Sinai says it all. So what killed Maurice Gibb? The official line: a twisted intestine, leading to cardiac arrest. That much is verified. But the fuller truth is written in the minutes he spent waiting. In the warnings ignored. In the equipment stored on the wrong floor. In the silence bought by settlements. He wasn't just a man who died of illness. He was a man failed by those who should have saved him. Rumors of a Gibb family curse remain. Speculation. Nothing more than the human need to explain tragedy. But the facts, painful and undeniable, speak louder. Negligence and delay cost Maurice his life. And yet Maurice's story doesn't end there. It lives in the music, in the harmonies of How Deep Is Your Love, in the grooves of Stayin' Alive, in the falsetto Barry perfected only because Maurice quietly pushed him to experiment. It lives in his family, in his son Adam's song, in the smiles of fans who still share memories of a man with a quiet laugh, a ready guitar, and a gift that no one else could replace. And it lives in his absence. Because when Maurice died, the Bee Gees fell apart. Not because Barry and Robin couldn't sing, but because the glue was gone. More than 20 years later, his name still lingers in the shadows of every song, every film, every story about the Bee Gees. Maurice Gibb, the silent genius, the invisible architect, the man who gave the world harmony and died in silence. Do you believe the full truth about Maurice Gibb's death has been revealed? Or are there still secrets locked away? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to RetroWaves, where the legends of music live on. Not only in the songs you love, but in the untold stories the world was never meant to forget. Because sometimes the silence hides more than the sound ever could.